So what do you think the chances are that this is our shortest episode yet?
There's no chance of that happening, as people will soon find out.
Welcome to the Sadsville Podcast, the official wrap-up show of everything Collider and Schmoes know, excluding Collider Nightmares. I'm Ryan Snelling.
I'm Brian Davids, and once I'm done with Mark Riley, his frayed USC hat will be nothing but a pile of strings.
What did I just say last week about negativity? What did I just say? I was talking about, hey, you know what? We probably do rip on Macuga too much, and it was going to be my last rant about Sasha. I was sort of ready to move on, ready to be positive again, but then Riley and Macuga brought this back up like a phoenix rising from Arizona.
He called down the thunder, and now he's got it.
I'm breathing smoke a little bit. I mean, I am, and me and you have not talked really since that episode aired, right? Like we kind of told ourselves, so let's just save it for the show. We have not talked about this yet, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I'll be honest. You know, I'm listening to the show. My live reaction. Originally, I was a little bummed, and I was, for the first time in a while, actually in the Facebook post, and I was watching people respond to this. Listening to Riley talk and Macuga talk, at first I was a little down, and they were right on the show that I was in a pool of sweat. But then as time went on, I got a little bit more angry, Brian, a little bit more angry. And then after I had more time to watch and replay those moments on the show, the three big timestamps that I have anyway, I watched it more and more, and the more I saw them, the more I just kind of thought, I think they're just out of their minds. They're like wrong on so many levels. They're wrong on so many levels. I mean, where do we start? Do you want to start with Riley?
Look, they might as well anoint me the new Facty McFacterson, since Riley no longer cares about the facts. Clearly, he's been sipping on Campia's orange drink a little too much during their late night movie talk meetings. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, he's complimenting me, saying I'm a heck of a guy, and all of a sudden, he's singling us out. And he's acting like he's doing it out of defense for Josh Macuga, when in actuality, it's just a proxy for his beef with us and Collider Nightmares, how we apparently don't watch it.
So it's safe to say that you sort of feel betrayed, since you were the last person to talk to him out of the two of us, correct?
I feel absolutely betrayed. I spent a month with his audio track a few weekends ago, doing some sound correction. And now he betrays me because Macuga is now flanking him on the show?
Okay.
And he acted like he was sticking up for Josh Magic Hat Macuga, but he was actually bitter about the lack of attention that we apparently give Nightmares. We don't give every one of their genre shows that much attention. We're already pushing 2 hours each week as it is, and those shows are well run by their respective hosts. But I do watch every one of those shows, including this week's Bladley blooper episode, so Yodi was using Macuga as his proxy for his own Nightmares agenda. He wasn't defending Josh's honor from Schmoville 25, which was a month ago. This is the same guy who took our movie talk feedback several weeks ago when they shortened mailbag emails and did a longer mailbag segment, since reading 300-word emails that people spend 3 hours crafting only to receive a 10-second response makes no sense when you're trying to optimize the show length. So shame on you, Mark Riley.
Let me just say that, again, Riley's the one that actually bummed me out more than Macuga. Because I actually don't think his criticism was out of line. I think it was sort of misplaced. What he said about you maybe nitpicking or going on about Macuga, I've said that. So I was sort of on board. What I didn't get is that it feels like, to me, that Riley has only jumped on the Schmoville podcast as of late. And this sort of goes back to the problem where people just pick out our negative criticisms over all the 1,000 positive criticisms that we do have. So what I think Riley is forgetting is that there are plenty of times where I've missed Jedi Council. Now, I've been very vocal. I love Jedi Council. Do I like Nightmares? Yes, it's a great show, but it's not for me. And if there was one show that I have no problem saying that I just don't watch, is Nightmares. But what I will say is that if I'm the host of this wrap-up podcast, it is actually only fair that I actually give Nightmares a chance every now and then. So I get that. I don't have to like Nightmares, and I don't think that's what he's saying. But if I'm going to host this podcast, I think he actually has the point that maybe every 2 weeks I might need to drop in and actually see what's going on with that show. That way I know, hey, if something new comes up, we can cover it on this podcast. But the problem with their genre shows in general is that the format never really changes.
Right.
So to go back to your point, there's not enough to say about those shows every week. It's just not going to happen. So yes, he's right that that's the show I skip. I will acknowledge that I need to do better, but
we still touched on Ash versus Evil Dead a couple weeks ago. We were all over that.
Yeah, I know. But look, I'm really not that bummed about what he said overall, and I'm glad that he still loves the discussion and the speculation, and I'm glad that me and him agree that maybe you nitpick. But even that nitpicking, though, I feel like you only did that 1 week. I don't feel like you have
that was Schmoville 25. He singled out Schmoville 25 and how I hovered on Makuga for too long, mainly because Makuga interrupted movie talk to twerk and flex. I felt he gilded the lily by doing both the twerk and flex when you only needed to do one. So I'm offended that Mark Riley is playing both sides of the fence. 1 minute, I'm a great guy. The next minute, he's trying to single both of us out, even though his agenda was primarily Nightmares related, not Makuga related.
Okay, here's what I'll say about that. He actually went back on what he said later on in the show and said, hey, I'm just busting balls. I actually think that Schmoville Podcast is a great show. I don't want people to think that I have to be praised on Schmoes No Live Show. I really don't. If the time that we have on that show, I feel lucky that they talk about us. And would it be wrong of me to have a problem or get angry or get offended by them criticizing this show? That would be wrong of me, because that's what this podcast is entirely. But it's sort of like how they were saying we were wrong and this is why, but we're turning it around and saying they're wrong and this is why. So look, I will do better. I'm really not that bummed about what Riley said. I will do better watching Nightmares. Yes, but it's just not my thing, and that's fine.
He realized he made a mistake. He tried to walk back his statements. I texted him during the show. I said, Riley, I've got you in my crosshairs this week. And as soon as I said that, then came out let me be clear. I really enjoy the show. I love listening to it. Those guys are great. So I don't know whose side Mark Riley is really on. I thought he was kind of the Switzerland in the equation. I thought he was the Pop's Barbershop in the equation, but I guess not.
Yeah. I mean, but do you get what I'm saying, though? I am very appreciative that they talk about us and promote us on the show, but I don't want people to think that we only need to hear praise from them. That is simply not the case. But we're just simply responding, hey, here's actually why you're wrong in this case, right? I mean, that's what we're doing.
Well, he's trying to say that we hover on Makuga too long, me especially, and yet the only example he had was the one episode that I did hover too long on Makuga. It's not like it's a regular thing. Yes, we tease him every week, but we don't hang on him as long as that particular episode. So trying to generalize it like it's a thing just isn't true.
Sure. And you're right. That was the episode he called out, which was 4 episodes ago now.
So a month ago.
He said, I don't find it entertaining. I'm like, let's move on. Okay, we sort of already responded to that. But to remind everyone, Makuga hasn't even really been on the live show in the past 3 weeks. So this is why Makuga is just now bringing it up now. He just hasn't had a chance to respond. And it's funny because, and I guess we'll transition into Makuga now.
The Wildman Chronicles.
The Wildman Chronicles, yes. I'll let you bring that in here in a second. What's funny is that after the live show, I messaged Makuga, Riley, and Copster. And I want you to guess the two people that I had in-depth conversation with and the one person who did not respond. Go ahead.
Copster did not respond.
Incorrect.
Okay, then I don't know.
Riley and Copster, great conversation. Makuga does not respond. He read and no replied my message, and I don't know why. Because I was honestly trying to have a conversation with him. Got nothing. And to be fair, maybe he was busy on a Friday filming Film HQ, because that's actually when I messaged him. But, you know, Makuga, I've tried to reach out to him ever since this little thing started. Every time, he just doesn't respond. So I don't know where this is going right now. Like, I'm trying to address it with him, but it's getting absolutely nowhere. And I want to bring this point back up at the end of our conversation. But go ahead, talk to us about Wildman Chronicles.
Well, here's the thing. I was lucky enough to email him a few weeks ago after Schmoville 25, when things kind of blew up about Makuga in particular, and he didn't respond back to me either. So I know he's aware of what things are and what we're trying to do here. And that's why I don't think he's that mad about what is said. I mean, he is the king of shtick.
I thought that was you.
But he's the king, that too, but he's the king of putting his foot in his mouth. So I don't think he's that mad. That's why he's not spending the time, responding and having to make it a bigger deal than it is, because I don't think it's that big a deal to him. And his response this episode all but proved that.
See, I don't know, man. I read it differently. I feel like he's actually mad and doesn't want to respond to us. And there's another thing that he did during this episode that makes me think that we're actually under his skin a little bit.
Well, we are under his skin, but I don't think it's this big ordeal that some people want to make it into. I don't think it's bothering him to the degree that some people will make you think. But I forgot to mention this last week, but we riffed a couple episodes ago. It was impromptu riff at the top of the episode. And we both said it would be nice if Makuga would let everybody know where he's from once in a while. And I said, well, maybe he should wear a Pittsburgh t-shirt to remind us. Well, the very next day, he wore his Pittsburgh t-shirt. Last week, I said I had clearly gotten under the wild man's fur, and then the very next day, for Monday's shows, he was clean shaven. So clearly this show, and us in particular, are the Ant-Man inside of his wild man suit. But he seems to be creating this anti-wild man persona that makes us kind of miss the wild man, or at least that's his intent. He wore the boring suit on last week's Schmodown. He didn't bring the wheel out. He was talking from the peanut gallery, but he didn't participate. He acted all subdued during the interviews. Again, I see what he's doing overall, but he had a month to think of something to say to me on the show, and all he could do was mock me with a pretentious voice when I am the Schmoville podcast historian as designated by one Christian George Harloff. And to say that he doesn't speak out of turn unless it's TV talk, which is his moment in the sun, as he put it, that's absurd. I quote him specifically when he does speak out of turn on the Schmoes Know Show, and that's when he interrupts to push his own Home Alone rant or Harry Potter game rules. So that's the only reason that I've kind of gone off on him every once in a while, because he does speak out of turn.
Well, there were the instances where, like the Umberto thing, which honestly, this was kind of like that. This episode, him talking about us, was sort of like Umberto in a way. Like his attitude towards it. And then the way that Christian sort of became a defensive. Christian's dialogue about us in this episode, it's like the exact same tone, the exact same words were used about us when he defended Umberto. It's pretty interesting. And I posted it on my Instagram because it's uncanny how similar Christian sounds like himself in those two instances.
You're urinating on them.
Yeah, and why are you breaking their balls like that? It was the exact same way.
Poor Snelling's sweating up a storm right now.
Well, that was true. But again, there was the instance with Umberto. There was the instance where, like we were talking about on TV Talk, where he likes to rush it along, but not when he's speaking. And again, of all the weeks, this was the week where, and we'll get to this, what he did on TV Talk this week was just ridiculous. But to respond to what he did on this show, for one, I love that he started off with a Seinfeld quote. That was great. I've got a lot of problems with you people, and I'm going to tell you about it. Look, Macuga thinks that he was brought on to the show for debauchery. And Christian even agreed with that. But the things that we call out, aside from the twerking that he did during the bet, because
And flexing. Don't forget the flex.
I'm fine with that, though. Me and you disagree on that. The things that we've called him out on are things that I think he does not do on purpose. So it's not part of the wild man persona, necessarily. He also said that what he doesn't appreciate, and this sounded authentic, this sounded real. What I don't appreciate is when those guys say things that just aren't true. I hear him, but nothing comes to mind. I'm not sure what he's speaking to.
I don't remember him saying that. Are you sure he said that?
Oh yeah, I wrote it down. I've got all these quotes listed here. He actually said that.
I don't remember him saying that.
I don't know what he...
Let me clarify again. I wasn't that upset over Josh's response. I thought we were going to get it a lot worse, me especially. I was more upset at Riley once again because Riley and I bonded on his episode, or so I thought. And then all of a sudden, because Josh is on the show, suddenly he's taking Josh's side when he's actually just pushing his own Nightmares agenda. So I wasn't all that upset by what Macuga was saying about us. And I was kind of let down that he didn't have something better prepared.
The thing about that, this is what I wanted to bring up. When Riley turned it around later in the show and turned around and praised us, which thank you, Riley, for doing that. While he was speaking about how well we do this show, if you watch Macuga's face, Macuga does not look happy with Riley. And that's actually my biggest point in all of this. Like, Macuga sort of said stuff about us, okay, whatever. But the look on his face, it was like the camera wasn't on him. He wasn't thinking about the fact that the camera was on him, and it legitimately looked like he was unhappy with Riley saying that. So I found that very interesting.
Let me back up a second. He did say, I don't speak out of turn when it's other people talking. I don't talk out of turn. That was the one thing that he was kind of passionate about. He said, yeah, I do it on TV Talk because that's the show he's hosting. But he did kind of take offense to the accusation that he speaks out of turn, which wasn't quite what I've been saying all this time. But regardless, I think that was the one thing that he was very defensive about. But I've raised all of these issues that prove that he does do that.
Yeah.
I quote them verbatim.
What's also interesting about this, and this is sort of my final point on everything Macuga. Macuga was talking to Christian, and Christian said, and Riley also said, that I more so defend Macuga when me and you, Brian, have these discussions. And then he said, I'll buy Snelling a drink, a meal, I'll hang out with him forever, or whenever. And that's when he said he was going to throw you down a hill in luggage or something like that. But the thing about that is...
Christian said that.
Christian said that, and yeah, okay. And then Macuga nodded or whatever. The thing about that is, and this kind of makes me feel like Macuga maybe doesn't even know what is actually going on. Like, I don't think he has ever listened to this podcast, and he gets it all because which is fine. Christian feeds it to him because Christian thinks it's funny. Riley might feed it to him. People tell him what we've said on the show, but Macuga defended me and said that, but then an hour and 22 minutes into the show, well after they discussed us, Ace was talking about whitewashing Mulan, the point that Ace was making, which it had nothing to do with us at this point. Ace was making a point that at one time on the show, he mentioned how Mulan would be a great live action adaptation. And then Macuga, I can see it in his eyes. It's like someone flipped the switch in his head, and he comes up to the mic and says, "Get Ryan Snelling, see if he can look it up." And then Christian responds very softly, "Quit bashing Snelling." So I believe, again, that Macuga was angry at that moment, but at the same time, he had no idea what the hell he was talking about. Because I'm not the guy on this podcast that runs the history lesson segment. And I was also the guy that an hour ago, he was actually defending and talking about befriending me. So that right there tells that his anger is misplaced. Did you catch that at all?
I don't think he watches the show, so I do catch what you're saying, and he does hear about these things third hand, and he really can't get mad at Riley because he doesn't know how well we prepare and produce this show. So I think this is all... Look, if there was really a serious problem here, we would not be doing this show still.
That's not true.
If there was
That's not
something
true.
that was really hurting somebody like Makuga, this show would not be in existence. They are having fun with it. We're having fun back. It has not crossed a line. Everybody's just kind of dancing in front of it. I'm unaffected by what Josh said in this episode, to be honest.
I don't think that's entirely true, though. I think there are levels. I think that it could get to the point where it would become a problem, but right now it's sort of like it's just at Makuga, and it's people think it's funny, and Christian thinks it's funny, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. But I don't know. There could be people, and going back to Copster, Copster's another talking point in this conversation too, because the way that Copster came in and made fun of us and the way that people reacted to that, there's got to be off the air conversation about this show. And this is why I compared it to Umberto, where it's like they have their on-air opinions, but they also have their off-air opinion. So you know that there are discussions about this podcast that are unlike the discussions on the live show. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So we could actually be a problem for someone, but we might not know because Christian's just like, well, they don't need to know. So I just find that interesting. But and again, to sort of kind of play devil's advocate, I'm not saying Makuga should listen to every episode of this podcast because there's no way if we're busting his balls, then he's not going to want to listen to our show. but it just kind of sounds like he doesn't actually really understand the whole thing. And that's sort of my final thought with all of that. But
look, I've emailed him. I've emailed him personally. I told him what the deal was, what this show's all about, what I'm trying to achieve here, and he knows what's up. So if he really cared all that much, he would have been disputing with me and going back and forth. But everybody's busy. He's doing his own stuff. It's really not that big a deal because he's gotten to where he is by similar tactics. We're taking kind of a lesson out of the Wild Man's playbook. So I'm unaffected by what he said. Riley, that's another story.
With Copster, again, just to kind of close that point, Copster, I gave him a ton of credit last week, and I'm going to do it again this week. But what I found interesting about what he said, he didn't say it on the show, but he said it in the comments section. He doesn't listen to our full episode, which again is fine. Look, I want to make it very clear. These people do not have to listen to our show to make me happy. They don't. I understand they're busy. Maybe to some of them it's the last thing they care about. They don't want to hear. That's fine. Totally get it. They also don't have to praise me for it. That's okay. My point is that Copster says that he doesn't listen to our entire show, but his joke towards you, he made fun of you for being the history lesson guy, which again, you also made the point that that's sort of why you're here. That's why Christian thinks you're important to this show, and that's something that I love about you as well. So
regarding Copster, I gave him a vote of confidence last week. I had a very big vote of confidence that I gave him last week. He didn't acknowledge that, of course, because people only focus on the negative things. However, I know for a fact that he does listen all the way through to this podcast because every episode I have a very deep reference for almost everyone on the cast. Like I'll make a very, very deep, almost like an Easter egg level reference just for them. A lot of the audience won't pick up on it, but they will. Cobster picked up on a nickname that I assigned him late in the episode, and he caught that and referenced it in the comments. So he had to listen all the way through to even catch that. So I don't believe him when he says, oh, I don't listen all the way through. That was just his way of downplaying the fact that I'm going to accuse him of stealing something from me, or at least me inspiring something that came on this week's live show. More on that later.
okay. All right. But look, again, to be fair, like I haven't kept up with Wanger's show. Not that I don't want to necessarily.
I listen to that too.
You did listen to Wanger show?
I listen every week. I support everybody's shows.
There you go.
I don't pretend I listen 3/4 of the way through just to pretend I'm cool or something. I mean, come on.
Well, okay. Let's do what they did in the last presidential debate. And let's not close this segment without saying one positive thing about Riley, Macuga, and Copster. Do you want to go first or do you want me to?
I'll let you start.
People forget that I have so much in common with Josh Macuga that it's unreal. The one big thing being that my dream job is to be a late night talk show host. We share that same dream. He actually does it for the Josh Macuga show, which I very much respect. And I also think that TV Talk is the best show on Collider. So, look, if Macuga wasn't there, when Macuga's not on the live show, I take notice. So, yes, do I have issues with some things he does? Yes, but I really love the guy. So, this podcast is done out of love. That was like 3 nice things about Macuga, but that's okay. Maybe people needed that. Maybe Macuga needs that. What do you got on Macuga?
I've said plenty of positive things about Josh Macuga.
No, don't do it that way.
Hold on. If people bothered to listen, they would know that I say plenty of positives about him.
I'm trying not to be negative, Brian.
Hold on. Even though the show was supposed to be about Ben Affleck, he went off on a tangent about Carrie Coon because she was in Gone Girl with Ben Affleck. I love Carrie Coon, so I've said on many occasions, Josh and I were meant to be allies because we have the same taste, whether it's Halt and Catch Fire or Carrie Coon of The Leftovers.
God, is there a better episode or season of television, Leftovers season 2? My goodness.
No.
Anyway.
No.
All right, Mark Riley. Look, I respect the shit out of this guy. Even before I even knew that he was on the live show, I was listening to Far, Far Away, his podcast with Roca, Geek Nation. I love the guy. He came on Film Beef when I was doing Film Beef back in the day. He talked about Suicide Squad with me. Very genuine, very positive, and just authentic. And did that favor for me, and he's nice as hell. And, you know, we also have a lot in common. There was a while that I wanted to be a screenwriter, and that's what he originally wanted to do, and that's what he kind of still wants to do. So there's that. Yes. All right. What do you got on Riley?
Man, this is tough, but
Don't be like that.
I like that he stood up against Michael Bay in this episode. He doesn't like Armageddon. He made his point very clear, and I respect that.
Your positive comments are so terrible. You're praising like statements, their opinions, but not the actual person.
I'm doing the best I can, Snelling.
Cobster, again, I have a lot in common with you. I think we have the same exact taste in music. We both play music. I think, and I said it last week, I think your promotion to senior producer might be one of the most pivotal moments in the entire phase of 6, easily. And I still agree with myself after this week's live show. So keep it up. And I will listen to the Wanger show this week, and I will make sure that I watch Nightmares again next week.
Copster, we're both Orange County brethren. Your first show as senior producer was excellent, even if you lifted one of my ideas. And I'm a big fan of the Wanger show.
You, in this segment that you and I just did, you were easily the Donald Trump of the segment. Hands down. Hands down. Are you ready to move on? Do you want to talk about the Collider content briefly?
I do.
Okay. Well, actually, first, I just want to address, look, all this debauchery that unfolded between us and Schmoes on the Live Show. Let me just say that you guys, the listeners, the people who engaged with us on Twitter and Facebook, you made it so much fun, and I was glad to see that you guys were into it, and you were teasing us, sometimes defending them over us, which is totally fine. People were picking sides. I very much appreciate that you guys take the time to listen to this podcast. All the engagements that I saw, directly or indirect, because sometimes I just kind of stalked the comments. which were very funny. People have some very interesting things to say. That's for sure. But overall, it was great, and thank you so much for doing that. I'm gonna plug my Twitter because I feel like I got to talk to a lot more people because I plugged it early in the show. You can follow me at WhatUpSnell on Twitter. Brian, you want to give yours?
Yeah, you guys can find me at BDF331. This should help Cobster in case he doesn't listen to the entirety of this episode. That way he can follow me back.
Who needs to follow you back?
Cobster hasn't followed me back yet.
Makuga needs to follow me back. What the hell? He added me on Facebook, but he won't follow me back on Twitter. What the hell? Okay, let's talk about... I kind of just want to talk about every show briefly, but make a point about how many views they're taking in, because you've been watching the subscriber count on both Collider and Schmoes, right? Where are we at with those?
Collider's up to 295, and Schmoes is up to 270. Collider's going to hit 300 by the end of November. So since the Jeremy announcement, I've noticed a big uptick. Not significant, but it's going up relatively fast, and it's going to keep going up. And Schmoes, obviously, we want that to go up. And I think Jeremy, once he joins officially and is integrated into the team, I think we're going to see big dividends on that end too.
I mean, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but what are the odds that Jeremy is not coming back to Movie Talk and he actually just escaped from Campia's basement?
And he's just said on the show, I'm going to join just so that he could go home for a bit. That was his way of escaping.
Yeah.
John's Magic the Gathering prison.
Yes. And then there was like this huge, when they went to Vegas, there was this huge car chase of John's trying to get away. He couldn't, and that's why he made the announcement on Monday. Campia let him go, but now there's a restraining order. Is that likely?
No.
Okay, thank you. To kind of, again, talk about... every week that we do this show, we record at a different time. I work full time in retail. So, and you know this better than anybody. My work schedule changes every week. My editing schedule changes. So depending on the week, I'm not able to actually watch a lot of content. And if something huge happens, Brian is there to pick me up and tell me what I missed. Let me know if there's a timestamp I need to check out. But this week, I worked so many mid and closing shifts that I did not get to watch a lot of Movie Talk. So I'll let you take over with the Movie Talk discussion.
Well, I've got kind of a segment that I want to introduce, but it relates to Movie Talk. And because of the success of the Michael Giacchino pronunciation correction a few weeks ago on Jedi Council, I thought I'd incorporate it into Movie Talk, since there are various mispronunciations on Movie Talk every week that have been really driving me crazy for several years now. So every week I'm going to kind of do one of these, and people were really responsive to it in the comments. They were thanking me for finally correcting the shows in some cases. And look, it may seem like I'm trying to be a know-it-all, but at the end of the day, it helps them get the details right. And looks better when that first-time viewer tunes in and they get the correct pronunciation. That way, the fans of these shows, when they go out into their real lives, they're actually saying the right names and aren't corrected by their friends. So it's a gift that keeps on giving when you know the correct pronunciation. Anyway, this week's mispronunciation of the week is Gal Gadot. This one has driven me crazy for years. And even when people try to correct it, they're wrong. People like to say the T is silent. Again, that is wrong. It's Gal Gadot. You can even give it some Israeli flair. Gal Gadot. Gal Gadot. It's not Gal Gadot like Dippin' Dots. It's Gal Gadot.
You have Dippin' Dots out there in California?
We sure do. Gal Gadot. Gal Gadot. Say it with me, folks. Gal Gadot.
Okay.
Boom.
Thank you.
And that is your mispronunciation of the week.
Thank you, Brian. You went to high school, didn't you? You went to high school?
I did.
Didn't you hate those guys in English class that played grammar police? Or was that you in the classroom?
I had perfect grammar as of 7th grade because I went to a private school and that was all we did all the time. Grammar, spelling, punctuation. So it's just ingrained in me, whether people like it or not. But literally every week, though, there's always something that drives me crazy. And I know it drives other viewers crazy as well. So hopefully we can do some good with this new segment.
let's talk about TV Talk. And to relate it to the view count, Movie Talk gets about twice as many or more views than TV Talk. But the point that I want to make about TV Talk and Nightmares...
It's about 50,000 an episode on average.
50,000. Okay. The point I want to make about TV Talk and Nightmares especially is that I want them to be more active on their own. So Schnepp does a great job of representing heroes at Comic-Cons. And it's, to my knowledge, I haven't heard of Makuga and the gang doing anything like that for TV Talk. Nightmares, look, they're doing the Ash vs. Evil Dead recap. So that's great, but we'll talk more about that later. But
they go to horror festivals, though. They have a presence at some of these festivals that a friend's movie will be showing, and they're out and about in the horror community.
See, I didn't know that, though. I thought it was just like Clark Wolf going to these places, but I didn't think that she had the table set up and she was there for Collider Nightmares.
You don't need to have an official table to be there repping your show to some extent. I mean, Perry was a producer, I believe, on I can't think of the name, but there was a movie that came out recently. They talked about it on the show, and I think Perry was actually credited as a producer. So they are involved in the community like Schnepp is involved in the comic community.
Okay, that's fair. But don't you see the major differences between Jedi Council and Heroes versus those newer shows? And again, I know they're newer shows. I get that part.
Well, hold on. I don't know what Clark did to represent Nightmares at Beyond Fest or Fantastic Fest. I don't know the extent of what she did or didn't do, so I can't really speak to how much she was repping Nightmares or not.
Right. Jedi Council, though, that's like a movement that Christian has started. Everyone knows about Jedi Council. The fact that Christian's name is in Star Wars canon, the fact that, as far as I know, Movie Talk and Jedi Council are the only shows that get like perks from studios, because Christian gets all of like the Star Wars books in early. Lucasfilm sends them to him as gifts. He actually speaks to Pablo Hidalgo. Is there any other genre show that's like that? Has Nightmares had any sort of perks in that way?
Well, the Ash vs. Evil Dead stuff. They get screeners. They get access to guests. I mean, each show gets their own perks in different ways. Movie Talk and Jedi Council certainly get the most.
So I'm wondering if that is because of the view count, because Riley's right. I mean, the views on Nightmares, they're between 30 and 40K, but they're not as high as Heroes and TV Talk. So I'm wondering if the perks only come if their viewership goes up.
Well, don't forget, they represent Collider. Collider has a name on its own, just for the website, as being a respectable source of entertainment news. So when they say Collider Jedi Council, Collider by itself gives them some credibility. And then when they look under the hood and they see, 100,000 views per episode, of course they're going to sign on the dotted line when it comes to giving them screeners or event invites, etc.
I think this is also a great reason why they actually need Collider merch. And I think they even brought that up last week, I believe. So
it's coming, but not anytime soon. It is coming, though.
It needs to. I mean, several episodes back on Schmoville, we talked about the importance of repping the brand out in public as fans to get people talking. So that's another thing. They need to step up their T-shirt game on Collider. All those little things help, but...
Before we lose our way, can we address the Makuga controversy in the TV Talk comments?
Yeah, I wish that this happened any other week.
I know.
Because I really did not want to focus anymore on Makuga. Because, if we do this, Riley will want us to move on. But this was a problem for so many people, including me. Again, to remind everyone, I saw this on Monday, 3 days before I got the blowout on the live show. Makuga was just out of line. And again, what he said about Jessica Jones is not an example of the debauchery that Christian Harloff wants. There's no way, because it was actually such a minor statement, like he said it and it was done. but that there's no way he actively knew what he was talking about or he had any intention saying it. But for those of you who didn't,
surface level. It was meant to be surface level.
yes, for those of you who didn't see TV Talk or know what we're talking about, just to paraphrase, he said that Jessica Jones was like a woe is me type who just complained. Yeah, he said emo, complained about everything even though her life was great. Is essentially what he said, right? Do you need to add anything to that?
And obviously that is far from the truth, and people were very upset about that. She's a rape survivor, very, very dark past. Her parents were killed. One of the more tragic backstories of any comic book character, and people just had a field day in the comments. And I'm not here to bash Josh McCouga. I'm just engaging in the text of the comments. People were really upset about this. And look, I know what Josh meant. He's not trying to say that rape is no big deal. He's not trying to advocate rape. He just meant as a surface level look at each character in the Marvel Netflix universe. He was comparing all of them, which ones he liked more. Luke Cage, I think, was his preference just because the character had a bit more fun, even though there are some serious issues surrounding him. So I know what he meant, but people are still upset, and I hope he apologizes on next week's show.
It's also important to know that I realized that we're not talking about an actual person. Like, McCouga did not say that about a real life person. He said it about a fictional character. So I'm not angry because I think,
but they involve real life issues.
Exactly. I'm not angry because I think he depicted his view towards rape or whatever. I'm more upset that he just was so wildly wrong about a TV topic when he hosts TV Talk. Like, it was just kind of just absurd that if he actually thought that about Jessica Jones. That's what's absurd about it. But I'm not trying to defend the fictional character. I'm more or less just thinking that McCouga was just kind of silly with that. But
and to add insult to injury, they brought up the Punisher casting news later in the episode. And Amber Rose Riva was cast on the Punisher. She's going to play a character I can't remember the name of, but they thought it was Amber Rose, Kanye West's ex-girlfriend. So people had a field day with that as well, saying that they don't do their research, they're not prepared, yada, yada, yada. So obviously two very different type of complaints, but not a good week for TV Talk and Josh McCouga.
Very silly. I know you have something that you want to say about Jedi Council and Heroes before we move on, unless you've already said it.
Well, just a quick note about Heroes. John Campea has not been on in a month. So read into that as you want, folks, but he has not been on that show in a month's time. So it's been interesting to watch how his return to Movie Talk has affected his presence on Jedi Council and Heroes and anything else that he does. And it looks like Heroes is the one that typically, I don't want to say gets the shaft, but typically is the one that he has to miss when he's got a busy week in front of him. So obviously he's doing Schmodown stuff. He's doing more Collider News stuff of late. So it's obviously forgiven and whatnot. It's not a big deal, but it's interesting to point these things out since that's what we do.
Is it fair to say that Heroes is the more skippable show for him because most of what they talk about, they've actually covered already on Movie Talk, whereas Jedi Council aggregates like minor stories from other things like comic books and video games, stuff that aren't being covered on Movie Talk? Is that why Campea could pick Jedi Council over Heroes if he had to pick one or the other?
Yeah, Movie Talk deals a lot in comic book culture. It's very on brand for them to discuss comic books, etc. And so, yes, if he's going to miss one show, it certainly has to be Heroes because he's still able to get his thoughts out on the big comic book movie news for that given week. Schnepp's take on those news stories is just a bit more sweaty than Movie Talk.
Right. He's able to talk more about artists. He does this some on Movie Talk, but he's able to talk more about artists, and Robert Meyer Burnett's able to get in there. Without Campea, though, I mean, you like the people that are sort of replacing him. You like Amy and Ashley and Jason, all right?
Yeah, I like Ashley a lot. Jason, I haven't seen too much on that show. I did watch a little bit of him, I think, this past week, but I do like Ashley a lot.
Did you have a point about Jedi Council too? I want to make sure that you get everything out because I'm not trying to skip over anything.
Yeah, this is a Jedi Council thing. It's kind of a general thing between Mark and Christian, but it has to do with Star Wars. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but Ellis has missed all of the Rogue One teasers and trailers, meaning he's been out of town. Even the Star Wars Celebration behind the scenes reel for Rogue One, Ellis was out of town. For The Force Awakens, Christian was off at Fandango doing a Force Awakens trailer reaction, so Ellis did it with the Collider crew. Ellis was even gone for the international Force Awakens trailer, so the only one that they've done together was the teaser 2 at Star Wars Celebration, which was the Chewie We're Home trailer. So I just think it's strange that Mark and Christian, Schmoes know, never get a chance to talk about the big Star Wars teasers and trailers that drop. Ellis is always out of town, it seems. Did you happen to notice this?
No, I have not noticed it, and I think Copster's going to make fun of you next week about knowing all that information. I do love the story about how, like, where they were when they found out Lucasfilm was bought by Disney. I love hearing that story, where Christian called Ellis on the phone, and they were all excited, told him that they had to come over and make a video right then and there. That was great. Actually, one of the very first Schmoes Know videos I ever saw was their reaction to Celebration with Stuckman 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That was like one of the very first, aside from their interview with Lexi Alexander, because I was following Stuckman before them. So that was cool. I totally forgot about that. But
Christian had tears in his eyes when they showed their reaction right after it aired inside. I'm not making fun of him. I'm just saying that was that time. Yeah.
I love Christian's Star Wars fandom. He makes me a better fan with Jedi Council. I've said it plenty of times for sure. Speaking of Star Wars, let's talk about the originals. Actually, I don't know if originals is still the label or if it's Collider Crash Course or if it's going to be both, but I noticed that they changed the playlist to Collider Crash Course, which was the video about Mr. Sinister, Rita Repulsa, and now this Mace Windu is not Snoke video, which was great. Great job to everyone who produced that video. Great job to Christian. I like seeing Christian and other people do things like this because I've never seen Christian act this way before. And maybe the closest I can get is like his persona on movie Threesome, which he obviously doesn't do. But I think it's great that they're doing this again. I say it every week. Great video, and I can't wait to see what else they do with that. You caught the video, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, under the Collider original umbrella, now you've got this little sub-label of Collider Crash Course, where each personality gets to kind of riff on their particular genre of strength. And strangely enough, speaking of Mark Riley, on his episode, Schmoeville 26, I said to him, I would love to see more of these original videos, such as Christian disproving a popular Star Wars fan theory. And what do you know? 3 weeks later, Christian is doing exactly that, disproving a popular Star Wars fan theory. So once again, Mark Riley is using my ideas that I supplied him to furnish his show, and now he's betraying me on air this week. And so I'm very upset. I want to remind everyone how upset I am with Mr. Mark Riley.
We need to remind everyone, every fan of Collider and Schmoes know that all of this is coming from Brian. So
yes, every good idea came from me first.
Yeah, that's right. Before they do anything over there, they message Brian, lets him know, hey, this is a terrible idea. Hey, this is a great idea. Or how about this? And that's what you get on Collider, guys. I don't know if you know this, but there's a little behind the scenes factoid there for you.
Check the tape 3 weeks ago. I'd love to see Christian disprove a popular Star Wars fan theory in one of these videos like Schnepp created. It's on the tape, so check it.
Let's talk about recaps briefly, and then we'll talk Schmoedown. So, again, going back to my point where Jedi Council has become a movement. Star Wars is huge for Collider, and the Star Wars Rebels review has like 33,000 views an episode, which is great. What's interesting is that the Ash vs. Evil Dead official after show has like 4 times less. So do you have stars? or Cinemax, whatever this
I
comes on?
have Stars, so next week, or actually tomorrow when it airs, the third episode, I'm going to see if they drop the Collider video YouTube link at any point to promote this show. I'm curious what Stars is actually doing to create awareness, because it would seem, based on that view count, that they're not doing very much. I understand why Star Wars Rebels has a huge following in comparison, because Jedi Council is the more established show when compared to Collider Nightmares. So you've got all of the Council fans on board with their coverage, since they've been on board with the Council for a lot longer than Nightmares. So that has something to do with it. But yeah, I don't think Stars is doing what they should be to push this after show. I mean, they can't be, right?
I don't know. I mean, if John Campia's Arrow after show can get like 30,000 views and when it's just him in front of a curtain, there's no reason why the official after show for Ash vs. Evil Dead should have that low of numbers. So that concerns me.
Well, he had his AMC following. He had his AMC following at the time, and he's been on YouTube for 10 years at that point. So,
well, still, they have the Collider following. So, look, I'm not saying he should be better than the Arrow after show, but it's such a wide gap.
But Ash vs. Evil Dead does not have the widespread appeal that Star Wars does. Nightmares isn't that established. It's not that old of a show. There's a much smaller pool that they're dealing with in comparison to Rebels, in comparison to Arrow, which is very on brand with Campea as well as AMC and Collider. So we have to see what Stars is doing first to fully flesh out the situation, I think.
We'll do more research on that, and maybe we'll talk to Riley throughout the week and see if he can give us a scoop on what's actually going on. Because I've actually been wondering that the past several weeks on this show, and we haven't really gotten anywhere on it. So just thought I wanted to bring that up. So is there anything else left to say before we get to Schmodown?
Let's get to Schmodown.
Okay, so the tag team match this week was ETC versus Real Rejects. Now, these are two channels that I do not watch. And when I clicked on them, I was very surprised at their subscriber count. Because for me, I sounded like Dennis when I said that. For me,
and every other YouTuber,
the only other person I knew was Elliot Dewberry because of the previous Schmodowns this season. So not only was I surprised about the viewership that those guys have, both channels, Christian made a very important point on Facebook to the Schmobo page and Movie Trivia Schmodown page. He just sent out a little reminder, look, be a good sport, be a good fan. We want to promote this league. We want to help it grow. Let's support these newcomers before you sort of discount them, okay? So I saw that post before going into the match, and I was trying my best to keep an open mind. But for some reason, I was annoyed by these guys. I was a little annoyed by them. I'm not going to lie. And I don't know if that's the popular opinion or the unpopular opinion. How did you feel about ETC and Real Rejects?
Well, I was familiar with ETC because I saw them play Manson Malone back in Phase 5. They beat Manson Malone handily in round 1. It was a knockout. So I was familiar with them already, but Ricky Schroeder on ETC, I'm going to call him Ricky Schroeder for this episode, he had a very difficult attitude, you could say. He said some things I thought were in bad taste, even if it was shtick. Sometimes shtick crosses the line. And like I said, you can dance in front of the line, just don't cross it. I think he crossed it. He was not a very likable figure. And to introduce two foreign teams like this, it probably wasn't the best foot to get off on when it comes to two teams that people don't know very well.
It didn't seem like they were playing a heel card. Like Jeff Snyder is someone that I thought, hey, I don't really know how I feel about this guy. But I could tell he's playing a heel card, and he's conscious of that, and I appreciate that, and that makes me more interested. But I kind of thought...
But Jeff's been on the show before for several years, so people are somewhat more familiar with Jeff than they are these guys. Most of these guys were completely foreign, even if ETC had been on the Schmodown before.
Again, it felt like they weren't really doing anything to try to get people to like them. even though this was the first match for Real Rejects, and it was the first time that I saw Ricky Schroeder. But I don't know, they were just kind of annoying. And do you know, if you know who ETC is, do you know if these people know each other already?
I don't know. Let me just say, though, that I was supportive of this match because I've said it before. I want Collider and Schmoes to reach out of the usual channels that they do business with and to kind of build some new fans, to go outside of their usual comfort zone and hopefully bring in a new audience. So I respect what they were trying to do by bringing in two channels that we typically don't hear from all that often. Real Rejects, no one had any familiarity with them. ETC had been on a little bit because of Elliot, obviously the tag team match in the past in Phase 5, but overall I respect the effort to get some new eyes on this channel. And that doesn't excuse Ricky Schroeder to say, we could leave right now and still have the same number of subscribers. So things like that you just didn't need. I want to also say that John of Real Rejects looks like Jason Lee with long hair, as well as Philip Jennings in disguise from The Americans. And most of all, he looked like Tom Cruise in Born on the 4th of July. So I had a fun time kind of matching up his doppelganger.
You said this a second ago. I will never be the guy that says that the Schmoedown only needs to stick to its core crew. There are people who comment and say, oh, get these people out of here. Just keep it with Collider and Schmoes. No, I will never, ever say that. With that being said, there are going to be teams that I just don't like. I watch every Schmoedown. I love movie trivia, but am I going to enjoy more matches than the others? Sure. Absolutely.
The point isn't really to entertain us all. I mean, we want to be entertained, of course. They want to entertain us, but the point is to bring their fans over to the Schmoedown, over to Collider. That is the point of these matches. So remember, folks, we want our friends at Schmoedown to grow, and these matches allow for that growth to happen, like them or not.
Right. So, and no one should argue that. No one. Just to talk about round one, I can't believe that Ricky ETC didn't know Rachel Weisz and The Mummy. That's sort of like a recent franchise. Recent, it was in the 2000s, and you figure that a movie fan like him would know that. But then again, John on the other side didn't know the movie Big Daddy or the fact that the twins were in that movie. So a very interesting brain farts in round one.
Ellis said it best. Ricky Schroeder drinks and Elliot gets the questions right. Elliot was on fire this entire episode. He carried Ricky on his back. I don't think Ricky got more than one question right himself the entire match. No hyperbole there.
How come in round two, Elliot mentioned something about the wheel not being accurate? Do you remember what he's referencing? Did you catch that at all?
Well, there have been some controversies where some people will screenshot the wheel and they'll tweet the image out, and it'll look like the wheel is pointed at a different category. Like some people insisted that it wasn't Tarantino in a previous match, that it was really on something else. So I think they made some improvements to the wheel so that people at home can see what category it's on at all times, because Christian has had to answer several of these screenshot emails where people insist a different category was actually selected, but if you look closely in person, you can see that it's really what they said it was. So what we see and what the show sees in person was different because of the old ticker. So that's the improvement that Elliot was making, or the point that he was making.
So Makuga, when you go out and bring out the wheel, please stand there behind it throughout round two. That way you can judge this yourself, and we're not just taking the team's word for it. Was Greg joking when he said it might be Color of Money, even though they said it was incorrect? Did you catch that? They had chosen Scorsese movies, and ETC was asked about a certain movie, and they answered Color of Money, multiple choice, and it was incorrect. And then they went to Real Rejects, and Greg said that it might be Color of Money, and he was still thinking about it. Was that a joke?
I remember that moment, but I remember ETC giving a different answer, and that's why Greg went through the process of elimination. And that's why he said it could be Color of Money, because obviously the other team already eliminated one of the answers. I could have sworn ETC said something else besides Color of Money, which would explain Greg's response.
I'm fairly positive that Christian gave them the multiple choice. They answered B, color of money, and it was incorrect. And then Christian read off the multiple choice again. And every time Christian mentioned one, but when he got to color of money, he said maybe, even though it was just proven to be incorrect.
I could have sworn they said a different answer, but regardless, that was a huge steal by Real Rejects. That kind of got them back into the match, that steal right there. And it was 12-4 ETC at the end of their round 2. This was before Real Rejects had their round 2. They kind of shocked me in round 2. They got Arnie and Sly. I thought for sure there was no way they were getting the Burma Rambo question right, and yet they got it right. They got the Eraser question right after that. I was shocked that not a single team knew Apollo Creed's trainer's name, Duke.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe nobody got that right. I could not believe it.
That was nuts.
And then they had an amazing guess, Real Rejects, the Nighthawks guess, which was originally supposed to be French Connection 3. Then they got End of Days. So Real Rejects somehow at the end of round 2 took the lead 13-12 when it looked like Elliot of ETC was going to take it all by himself.
No, wasn't John almost pointless throughout round 2, though? Because Greg didn't confer with him about anything in round 2.
Well, John got the Burma question. John got the Eraser question. John said both of those.
So maybe it was the last 2 questions because they didn't confer about Creed's trainer. And yeah, okay, it was the last 2 questions. I thought that was very strange. It also annoyed me that he wouldn't answer the questions into the mic. But
yeah, I've been bitching about this too. Greg, I could not hear a word he said because he kept swinging his chair away from the mic. But in comparison to ETC, John was far more useful than Ricky Schroeder was. Ricky Schroeder brought nothing to the table except offensive comments.
Yeah, I just don't. I really wish that people would just talk into the mic when they're doing these type of shows. You think that he would know by now, but anyway.
Ricky's one-pointer in round 3, Patty Jenkins, who's the director of Monster that is currently doing a comic book movie. How do you not get that when you're in this space? Elliot got Living Daylights for 3 points. And this is where ETC took the lead. And this is something that I didn't know they really could do or did do in tag team matches. But Christian and company reserve the right to skip the team's 5-pointer or their 3-pointer and bring it over to the other team for their 1-pointer or their 3-pointer. And that way they get a more dramatic finish. Because ETC never got their 5-point question in this match because the match was already decided. So they kind of jumped over to Real Rejects after ETC got their 3-pointer correct, and they never had to ask a 5-pointer because Real Rejects missed all of their final round questions. So I didn't know that they could do this or did do it. It seems to be something that they do more commonly in tag team play. I don't know if it's a thing in singles play, but this allows for a more dramatic ending. So what do you think about this, and have you noticed it in singles matches?
Yeah, I've only noticed it in tag team.
They did it in the Rotten Tomatoes match with, who did Rotten Tomatoes play?
No, wait. Rotten Tomatoes played Mega Powers, right?
That's right. So I noticed it in that match, but I've only noticed it in tag team. I've never noticed it in singles. So that kind of threw me for a loop for a bit there, but ETC took it. And Ricky Schroeder went to shake Greg's hand, and he pulled the hand slight where he didn't shake it and just brushed his hair back. So that's kind of that's Ricky Schroeder in a nutshell right there.
Should John have known the 4 actors in Stand By Me?
Yes, most people do. But because it's the Schmodown, and these questions where you have to name multiple answers are extremely difficult, I don't blame him for getting it wrong. I still hate these questions. You should not have to give 4 answers for 1 question, especially when the other team may not have to. Please do away with these multiple answer questions.
Take that up with Chris Skalicki. Chris, I know you're listening. There's our complaints.
Skalicki.
Well, okay, so it was 15-3. ETC won the match. I guess I'm glad because, again, that's the team I'm more familiar with.
15-13.
Yeah. What did I say?
15-3.
Oh, I'm sorry. 15-13. You're right.
Did you know who was Tango and who was Cash, by the way?
No, I've never seen it.
Oh my God. I forgot you're 21 years old, so.
I'm the same age as Christian Chupacabra, but
Snelling said that, not me.
So ETC at the end of the match called out Mance and Inman. Is that a thing? That's not a thing, is it?
Well, once again, in Phase 5, ETC took out Mance and Malone in the first round, and because of the smack talk in the beginning of this match, they talked about how they see Scott on all these taxi cab videos where he's talking about movies. So that was kind of a tie-in to their smack talk, but also based on the fact that they beat Mance handily in Phase 5, they wanted to go after him again in Phase 6. And obviously, Inman is now Mance's new teammate.
Since when?
They want to give him another beat.
I don't remember that ever being a thing. I thought Mance retired from the Schmodown. I don't remember an asterisk.
Singles play.
I don't remember.
Singles play. He's
I
not
didn't remember
retired
that
from team
asterisk. Play. I didn't realize that he was in it with Jason Inman still.
I remember it being announced, but I just remember he was done with singles play, but not team play. And ETC want more Mance, just like Phase 5.
Okay, that's my bad. So before we go to Cody and JTE, which team are you looking forward to seeing more from?
Rotten Tomatoes.
No, I meant from this match.
I know. That's why I said Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
If I had to pick one, I would say screw it. I'll say Real Rejects, just because Ricky Schroeder pissed me off so much.
I'm going to go the other way. I think that...
Of course you are.
I'm doing it on purpose. Snelling just goes against everything Brian says on purpose. I don't actually vent out my actual opinions on this podcast. None of what I say is real.
I want to see more Dewberry in singles. I've said before that Dewberry can be a factor in singles, so I support Dewberry in that sense. But yeah, I'll take Real Rejects in this case, even though I'm not particularly fond of either team.
I think now that I know who Ricky Schroeder is, I can grow to appreciate his obnoxious behavior. So, yes, it kind of caught me off guard this week, but he might be exciting later on because of that, so I'm going to go with it.
He told the other team to F you for wanting to take their channel away from them.
I know. Okay.
I mean, this goes beyond shtick. I mean, there was some serious tones in there. I like your tones.
Oh, I love it. Let's talk about Cody Miller and JTE's match.
Olympic gold medalist Cody Miller. Let's get the full title here.
That's right.
Quick note. What fascinated me about this is that it's not an exhibition like we thought it would be last week. It's a real league play match.
Oh, I didn't even realize that because
they Christian said specifically it's not an exhibition.
So they plan on having Cody back. So that's good to know. I watched this match at Jay's house. I didn't have my notebook where I usually have my notes. I know that you're prepared to talk about this though, but
Jay with an E?
Yeah, Jay with an E.
Just clarifying which Jay.
Yeah. There's only one thing to talk about though. And that's the fact that JTE lost the damn match, okay? I predicted last week there's no way in hell Cody wins this match. I like the guy. I love him. I support him. I'd like to see him in the future. But there's no way he beats JTE in the Schmodown. And you even messaged me before I even watched it. You're in for a real treat. And I still didn't believe it. Like, I thought that you were just trying to get me all worked up. But
I was, but
I get to Jay's house. He had already seen the Schmodown. Told me pretty much what you said, that I was in for a real treat. There was no way in hell going into that third round that I still believed that Cody was going to win this match. I mean, there was just no way. I am blown away by this. I am so unbelievably disappointed with JTE. Unbelievably disappointed. And here's why. Because I still think it's because of the questions. I think if Cody and JTE do this again, there's no way Cody wins. I think that Cody doesn't really have much of a chance still, based on the questions he was given in this match, and based on the questions that JTE was given. I still don't believe Cody has much of a chance against anyone in this league. I think this is a complete and total outlier, and my mind is still blown from the result of this match. And that's all I have to say, really. I mean, that's all. That's all. What do you got for me? What did you think?
Well, this is probably the biggest choke in Schmoedown history. I mean, JTE had this thing in the bag, 9-3 going into the final round. And Cody, I love the guy, but he was simply outmatched. JTE was handling him, and the questions that Cody should have gotten right, he wasn't getting right. I mean, JTE was sitting there scoffing at some of the questions that Cody was not getting but should have gotten. And this is just a thing of age. I mean, age is such a big factor in this competition. That's not foolproof. I mean, RB3 knows the classics very well, so he can hold his own against an older opponent like Roca. But in this case, Cody, on some of the older films, he just could not hang with JTE. But round 3, JTE got some impossibly hard questions. How many of the Reservoir Dogs had colors in their names? That's very tough. What was the name of the plant in Little Shop of Horrors? What was the name of the pet boa constrictor in Indiana Jones? Versus questions about Cody's favorite film, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He mentioned that on the Schmo Snow Show the night before, how much he loves that film. And then he had a question about Polar Express. Then he had a question about who was the parrot in Aladdin, Gilbert Gottfried. So round 3 went all the way for Cody. JT couldn't get a question right. Cody pulled off the amazing upset, but at the end of the day, JTE lost this match more than Cody won this match. And I say that with all due respect to Olympic gold medalist Cody Miller.
Got a text after the match from Tyler Myers, and he asked me if I thought that the match was rigged. Okay? I haven't looked at the comments yet, but I'm sure plenty of people think that it's rigged. Now look, do I think it's rigged? No. Is it rigged? No, it's not. But Chris Galicki does the questions, and there are certain categories that are placed into the matches because they play to one of the contestants' strengths. Now, is that rigging? No, because it still depends on the chance that they select these topics, whether it be the wheel, or the number that they pick in the third round. Is this rigged? No. But there are certain questions that were thrown in because of who is in the match, and they happen to get them. That's sort of my thing. And Christian might say that that's one of the dumb things that we have wrong about the show, but I just kind of think that's obvious. I mean, the fact that Harry Potter movies isn't always on the wheel. Christian was right. It's been on it before, but I'm just saying.
How does nobody get Maverick's real name of Pete Mitchell? How does that happen? Especially when it's multiple choice.
Because, okay, so if you're not sure and you have an image of Tom Cruise and Top Gun in your head, Tom Cruise doesn't look like someone who ever played a guy named Pete, right? I mean, Pete is not the thing that comes to mind when you're thinking of Tom Cruise. It's just not. So
process of elimination, I'm always going to come back to. I knew the answer, of course, but process of elimination, it would still come down to that one. I mean, Cody did not get Tony Montana's first job of a dishwasher right. That's just youth right there. I mean, again, nothing against him, but Armageddon questions Cody got wrong. And JT made him pay for that, the patch question. So Cody got an amazing question right regarding Mission Impossible, red light, green light. That was
great.
Super impressive. That saved him right there. Then he got the Italian job multiple choice. But JTE handed this match over. I still can't believe it. I tweeted, or not, I didn't tweet, I commented, I don't believe what I just saw because it's baseball playoffs right now. That's a famous baseball call. Jack Buck, Kirk Gibson in the playoffs, of course, and people went crazy with that just because it was such a fitting response, not to toot my own horn, but I still don't believe what I just saw.
Look, you mentioned RB3. I can't wait to see the Wangers show up in the next tag match because RB3 beat me in the Fan Schmodown like 18-7, I think, because he got like all Kubrick and knew all of the answers. So RB3 knows his stuff. I'm really excited to see them show up in their next match for sure. And they're youngins.
He hasn't seen Armageddon. But he's seen every Kubrick film.
Right. So look,
good on you, RB3.
Kind of stands out. You bring that point up about age. Look, Cody, I still think falls under that category, just not knowing enough because of his age. I would be that way in the Schmodown. Like, there's no way I could compete in singles. There's just no way. Yes, there are plenty of questions that I can answer right, but I just don't think I stand. Like, when I watch the show, I get a good amount of questions right just by watching the Schmodown and guessing before they answer, but I still don't think I'd be eaten alive in the singles for sure. But anyway, let Christian know in the comments that you want me and Brian to compete in the tag matches, because we'll definitely do it. We'll definitely do it. We'll be the Sadsville podcast.
Elevate us to the Schmodown.
That's right. We need your help.
Elevate us.
I was just stalking Christian's Twitter, by the way, and he said that Nick Mundy and Finstock might have an 80s movie themed Schmodown coming up. I find that very intriguing. I want to see that happen. Make it happen. Let's rally behind that, everybody.
You would think those two guys would be two peas in a pod, that they would be the Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty of the movie space. I want to see them do more stuff.
I have been very lucky to have very positive interactions with Nick Mundy on Twitter, because if you follow him, he could be rough on people. I've been very lucky to have several nice interactions with him on Twitter, and me and him are similar in that we're very outspoken on Twitter. I'm sorry to all the people who follow me and they're tired of the political stuff, but Nick does that too. And anyway, I'm a fan of his. So there's that. Have him on the Schmodown. I'm ready to move into the live show, number 254. It's just, about Ben Affleck, which is great.
And the celebrity impression dating game with Ashley Mova. I love this game.
I love impressions. So I look forward to it every time I see it in the title as well. So
I have a question for you. Mark Ellis hasn't been on in 2 weeks. Now that it's no longer the Schmoes Know movie show, do they have to maintain the Thursday show day? Why not do a Wednesday show to ensure that Ellis is around more, since you're not placing your show on the same day that movies come out, because it's not identifying itself with movies as much anymore? It's troubling me still that he's missing moments like Miri's send-off or the introduction of the RB3 cam. Is there a way we can fix this to have Ellis around more? What do you think, given the new title of the show?
As far as scheduling goes with Collider,
let me just say for background information, they previously said that they did the live show on Thursdays because movies were released on Thursday, and it just seemed like a natural day to do it in response to movies being released that night.
Right.
There's no perfect solution, it seems. I can already tell by your hesitance to answer.
I think we have to just accept that Ellis has his other passion, his other career. As far as scheduling of Collider content goes, I like where everything is placed. I love looking forward to the show every Thursday night. It's close enough to the end of the week where it sort of feels like just the cap of the week, right? And that, well, of course, the next day is a Schmodown, and of course, if you watch Movie Talk, but it just kind of feels like we're wrapping up the week. With that being said, at the same time, I'm a huge advocate for them including or excluding the word movie from Schmoes Know Show. I love that, because even Christian pointed out in a YouTube comment that, and you also supported this as well, a wall-to-wall 2-hour show about movies isn't as interesting as if they talk about themselves and other stuff. So I think I like everything the way it is, and we just have to accept that Ellis can't get there every week.
To those people that are complaining about slightly less movie talk, when they originally came up with the Schmoes Know Movie show, they weren't talking about movies all week long at AMC or Collider. Now that they are, now that that's their full-time career, they don't have to talk about wall-to-wall movies anymore. And quite frankly, they're bored of talking about the same topics by the time the Thursday show rolls around. So it just makes sense based on where they're at in their careers right now. And like you, I love the Thursday show. I think the schedule is perfect, but I hate the fact that Ellis is missing so many shows. And like I pointed out earlier, he's never around for those big moments when Star Wars stuff drops. And I would like to see him around with the rest of the group to share those moments with them. So Darth Plagueis, let's say he has a lightsaber to Ellis's skull. What does Ellis pick in your mind? Schmoes Know or stand-up comedy?
Stand-up comedy. And those are his actual words to me when I first met him and he came on Film Beef. He said he considers himself a stand-up comedian primarily, and Schmoes Know was an accident. So, yes, Ellis is fantastic. I love him very much. He's like the only, of all the people that we talk about on this show, he's the only one that I consider like a friend, because he's the only one I've actually met in person, and I feel like he's the only one that is actually, up until recently, I'm getting to know Riley a little bit more as well, and of course I talk to Christian more than any of them. But as far as like the people who know more about me than anyone, it would be Ellis. So I consider him a friend.
Riley was a friend.
Oh, is this a Marvel or Captain America Civil War moment? So was I.
I want to punch him in his perfect teeth. I want to punch him in his perfect hair.
That's how I feel about Ellis, but we just have to accept it. But think of how cool it's going to be the bigger he gets in stand-up. Like when he releases his next album and when we see him get his Netflix special. I mean, those are things that we're really going to be happy about. And I have a feeling that it's going to happen. I think Ellis is just getting bigger and bigger. And he's genuinely funny. I mean, I've seen his act twice. He's genuinely funny. So,
and then when he gets so big, we get the announcement that he's leaving the Schmoes Know show to be a full-time touring comedian, and he's starting his own sitcom on NBC.
He hates acting though, so he might write for a sitcom or produce it, but I don't think he'd act in it.
The rise and fall of JTE proved that he can still act based on all those lessons at Ashburn's Royal Academy for Acting. So don't put it past him.
We did that video together on the SK Podcast channel. That video that really boosted my ego there.
He carried you, bro. He carried you.
He did. Yeah, he did. I was piggybacking off Ellis.
The best part was that there's a guy like on his break in the background who has no idea what the hell is going on. He's just trying to enjoy his 10 minutes off of his crappy job before he has to go back to it. And there you are, like, having this nonsensical conversation. He's just trying to smoke a cigarette in peace.
Right. What's funny about that is right before we filmed that skit, somebody asked me, it might have actually been you, how much of that was improv or scripted. Yeah. None of it was scripted. That day, I think, maybe it was earlier in the week, I messaged Christian and said, hey, would it be cool if I do a video? Because I'm going to go see Ellis. And he said, sure, that's fine. And, I had a beer with Ellis. Ellis put my beer on the Schmoes Know card. I don't know if Christian does that. I don't know if that's considered a business expense. I find that funny. But we were sitting there at the bar, and he was going to have to... glad hand all the people that came to the show afterwards. And I said, okay, real quick, can we knock this video out? And I swear that I have permission. And he said, of course. So I pretty much just told him, hey, I'm going to act like a crazy ass fan and just go with it. And he could not have been a better sport with that. Jay with an E also made the appearance as the drug dealer at the beginning of that conversation. He's the one who actually drove me to Cincinnati for that trip. But anyway, yeah, Ellis... There's no doubt that he's a great performer in front of the camera. I mean, he did a great job in that conversation, and I've since gone back and seen him like do MTV. I think it was the movie awards. He did some like TV spots and stuff. So that was always fun to watch. But he can definitely do it. He just doesn't like to. But I don't even remember what we were talking about. Oh, we were talking about missing Ellis. But anyway, I just to sum that up, I want to be supportive of his stand up. And yes, it sucks when he's not around, but we gets to hear his voice during the ads, during the break still, if that counts for anything.
Just give me the Carfax.
Okay, so I was just gonna bring up. I know you have a few rants, and I'll let you do that. I want to bring up the RB3 cam because
So do I.
okay, let's talk about it because this goes back to what I said with Copster. So, by the way, Copster produced certain episodes of the show when Miri was out that we didn't know about. So Copster has actually produced several episodes that we've already seen, but this is technically, last week was his first episode, but this was, to us, his first episode. Like, this is the one where we were like, okay, what's Copster gonna do? And right out of the gate, this RB3 cam is fantastic. And I don't know if this falls under the umbrella of things that he wants to implement into the show that remind him of Phase 3. But this is just great. I love it even more that RB3 isn't mic'd, by the way, because you just get to see him rocking back and forth in the chair. Fantastic. Everyone loves it. I don't think anyone can disagree with that.
You want to know why it's a fantastic idea?
Why, Brian?
Do you want to know why it's a fantastic idea?
Why, Brian?
Because he stole my idea.
I didn't really...
6 weeks ago, RB3 appeared on this show, and I said on that show or the show after that we should record his laugh and use it as a sound drop anytime there's a joke that we want to land. Cobster heard this and he incorporated it into the live show with a camera. So I'm going to take credit for this because that's what I do.
So let me just say that I do not condone your build up to that point because I was going with it, but I didn't realize where you were actually going. So I didn't know
you remember this moment. You didn't like the idea. I thought it was a brilliant idea, but clearly Cobster thought it was a brilliant idea that he took it and is using it on the live show.
I know that I just disagree with you to disagree with you, but you know, I don't really see the connection. I don't really see how it's the same thing. Like, it's in the same ballpark, but that was the RB3 cam cutting to him laughing. That was not your idea.
It's the same thing, but in video format. It's the same thing. I had the idea based on Howard Stern, Fred Norris dropping in sound bites. Imagine hearing RB3's laugh every week, anytime we want to give a joke an extra boost.
I don't know.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
I don't know, guys. Let me know in the comments section what you think. Do you think Copster stole this idea from Brian?
It's the video version of my audio idea. So it's not technically the same thing, but it was inspired by my idea. Therefore, I'm going to take credit for it.
I don't know if I'm on board, but that's fine. That's fine. I'll support you no matter what. Look,
hey, thanks.
Look, it's great though, and no one's arguing that. And I think if there's any criticism, people are concerned that the future of the RB3 cam, that it's not going to be overused. Cobster is aware of that. So Cobster knows to not overuse this gag. So I love it. And that was such a great addition right out of the gate for Cobster. I really cannot wait to see what else he does for the future of the show. Just fantastic. But let's talk about the panel. So you already brought up that Ellis wasn't there. Sasha wasn't there. You had Riley and Makuga, and we've already talked about that. But Tiffany was there as well.
I have a history lesson regarding Tiffany and the fact that Christian always has to say how that Tiffany doesn't like Anne Hathaway. And this, if you go back to most of Tiffany's appearances, Christian will make sure to kind of give her a hard time about not liking Anne Hathaway. So because everybody listening may not know the history behind this, I'm going to go into a history lesson because that's my designated role on this show, to provide context for everything that we hear nowadays. Christian Harloff knew that I've been a fan since early Phase 3. He knew that I've amassed all this knowledge. That's why he asked me to be on the show. Previous criticism of this podcast from longtime fans was that they were frustrated by the fact that newer fans were doing this show. So it just made sense for Kid Christian to refine the dynamic of the show that he created in Phase 5 by taking a rookie Schmovillian and a veteran Schmovillian and putting them together in the same show.
Is this about Tiffany or you?
But back to the history lesson. Some of you have noticed that Kid Christian gives Tiffany a hard time about not liking Anne Hathaway, something she always denies. Well, this has been a running gag since Phase 3. For example, when Interstellar was previewed in 2014's fall movie preview, Christian brought it up then, Tiffany denied it yet again. So where does this originate? This comes from the 2013 award circuit when Anne Hathaway was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in Les Mis. She already won a bunch of awards during the lead up to the Oscars, but she gave some very dramatic acceptance speeches with lots of tears and heavy breathing, as well as jokes that seemed scripted. So she kind of rubbed people the wrong way, especially women. Add that to the fact that Hathaway was barely in Les Mis, and you've got kind of a problem. Keep in mind, this was all around a time when Tiffany first joined the show. Katie passed the baton to her in episode 81. In episode 83, Bonnie Somerville and Sean Astin came on to discuss Oscar nominations, and Bonnie was very vocal how she didn't like Anne Hathaway's nomination for one scene, albeit a good one, when Sally Field brought the goods alongside Daniel Day Lincoln. Tiffany chimed in how every woman seems to have a negative reaction to her right now, given those previous acceptance speeches, and how disingenuous she seemed. So fast forward 5 episodes to the Schmoes 2013 Oscar special, episode 86, and the cast of Les Mis was performing during the Oscars while the Schmoes did a 5-hour live reaction podcast. Tiffany was commenting during the performance how everybody was so serious as they were singing, while Anne Hathaway was again on the verge of tears during her performance. Christian, Ellis, Nost, Finstock, they ran with this and said Tiffany clearly hates Anne Hathaway. Tiffany denied it like she does to this day and clarified how Anne just seems disingenuous. She then said that she shouldn't win for being in the movie for 5 seconds. She also said that Hathaway shouldn't have another overly surprised acceptance speech since she was winning every other award at the time. However, that was enough for Christian to make it a recurring gag, especially when Hathaway won the Oscar a few minutes after this bickering first started. So you could say that this ball busting was everybody's way of inaugurating Tiffany as their new co-host.
Well done.
Well done.
Well done. I wondered why Christian went to that in the middle of the, debauchery. This was about Ben Affleck films. I was actually really excited that this was the topic. I was really into it. Loved it. I'm a huge fan.
What's your favorite Ben Affleck film?
That he's directed or been in?
That he's been in.
I would probably say
it's got to be a Ben Affleck movie, not a movie he was in. Like Good Will Hunting, he was in, but that's a Matt Damon movie.
Yeah, I would probably say The Town.
Likewise, I agree.
If you're talking about lead, it's probably 100% The Town. But I actually don't think that that's the best movie he's directed. I think my favorite one is Gone Baby Gone.
Great film.
It is a great film.
Argo, great film.
Argo, I'm not so hot on. Like, it's obviously a great film. I'm just like, okay, that's fine, great job. But I'm more into Gone Baby Gone. That movie made more of an impression on me than any of his films. And I'm super excited about Live by Night. I know that's not what we're here to talk about. But
there are movies that I love him in that are not Ben Affleck movies, such as Mallrats. I freaking love Mallrats. That asshole from Fashionable Mail, Shannon Hamilton. Good Will Hunting, he's great in. He's also great in Boiler Room. But I can't call those Ben Affleck movies.
Sure. I really want to see Hollywood Land after they were talking about it. But
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So, but anyway, this would have been a perfect episode for Scott Mantz to come on. I would have loved to have heard from him, but obviously we didn't get him. Yeah, I mean, overall, I like this episode. How did you feel about it overall?
Great episode.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything like Phase 3, despite people's hopes, but it was a great episode nonetheless.
It might take time to get there. Just give them time. That's fine.
As I said last week, you cannot recapture Phase 3 in this studio. Please do not make me rant about this again.
No, I don't want you to rant about it again. Trust me.
But it was a great show. It was a way to take the Collider studio vibe and improve upon it, and they have. So progress already. I loved how Makuga knew all the filming location facts about Dogma because it filmed in Pittsburgh. That killed me. I'm like, how does he know all this? Of course, yeah, it was filmed in Pittsburgh. Of all the places for Dogma to be filmed, that's just hilarious to me.
Did he make a jab at us during that moment too? Like we were gonna call him out on that? I'm pretty sure he did.
Well, yeah, he mentioned Pittsburgh, and then he made a reference to the T-shirt. I like how everybody all at one time referenced us because they knew that we were going to jump on that. But I think he pointed to his shirt as if to acknowledge our previous point about his T-shirt. So again, we are under the wild man's fur. That's why he shaved it. That's why he's playing this very deep game where he's trying to create this anti-wild man persona in hopes that I miss the wild man persona.
Before we talk about, let's see, Christian called out Ken for his views on the Rogue One trailer, which I see both sides. I can see why someone would think that it was like too cookie cutter and gave away a lot, but technically,
I would have liked to see a little more preparation from Ken Knapsack. He had more mispronunciations than JTE during a bingo match, so hopefully next time he can improve upon his news segment.
Right.
But I love the good diversity joke. Kenny's the best.
I love him. I want you to get in because you got some things that you want to say before we get to celebrity impression dating games. So what did you want to bring up?
Well, I want to address Sasha, and there's a specific reason for it.
Again? She wasn't even on the show, Brian.
You know what's funny? Christian has not been on Schmoes Know with Sasha since August 25th when Derek C. and France was on the show.
Is that accurate?
Everything I say is accurate. If I reference a date, you know for a fact I've looked it up. So
That's right. Copster knows that as well. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to address Sasha because there are some people that are misunderstanding some points of ours in recent weeks. So I'll kind of take the...
Can I just say, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone uses the word clarify more than Brian Davids. When it comes to the YouTube comments on our podcast, nobody needs to clarify more than you, and I find it hilarious. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well,
Go
I'm
ahead.
getting used to this whole YouTube thing. I'm not really all that familiar with it, and every time I expect people to understand what I'm saying, I'm always proven wrong. So I always have to over-explain things so people make sure they understand what I'm saying. And yet, regarding Sasha, they keep misunderstanding a point that I've been making of late. So I want to quickly address the SPR experience because there seems to be a disconnect as far as what I've said recently. I said that gender is a factor in some people's dislike of Sasha. I am in no way saying that anyone who doesn't like her is automatically a sexist. I'm speaking to the segment of her critics that do factor gender. Like I've been saying, there's a bigger issue at stake since Sasha behaves in a way that is no different than certain male cast members. In fact, she's rather well behaved compared to other people who are loud, opinionated, or interruptive. I know that some male viewers simply don't like when a woman has a strong opinion. However, I know a lot of women who admire that very quality about Sasha. Not every woman has the ability to speak her mind in a group of men and not be intimidated. And that's probably why I still have never seen a woman commenter criticize the SPR experience in YouTube. Again, everyone is capable of being disliked for any particular reason, whether it's Christian, Ken, Ellis, or Sasha, without there being a political reason behind it. However, don't pretend that sexism isn't a factor for some people when it comes to the SPR experience, since she doesn't act like the idyllic female should to some men. People say terrible things to her and about her every single week. So you cannot tell me that people have that big of an issue with her occasionally being loud on a YouTube show to warrant going after her family, her belief system, her appearance. The list goes on. And if she's not on the show, don't gloat how great the show was without her. Just gloat that it was a great show.
I agree with that last point. I mean, I think that's bullshit. And I talked about Sasha last week. The other thing I don't get is why people will get defensive over like that. I'm sure there's someone that's going to comment responding to what you just said, and they'll get defensive acknowledging that they don't fall under what you just presented.
Right.
So it's like, if you know that Brian and I aren't talking about you, then why... Feel free to express your opinion, but why do you get defensive about it? That's what I don't understand. Right. There are plenty of, even on my Twitter, there are people, I'm tweeting things, sure, a lot of it's just nonsense and a lot of it's political or whatever, but there are people who respond to me and just get offended by something that I tweeted. I'm like, well, I didn't really say it about you necessarily. So if you want to engage, that's fine and talk about it, but don't just start an argument, because more often than not, they get offended when I'm not even talking about them per se. And that goes back to anyone who has a problem with someone having an opinion on a film. I mean, that's just the internet in general, I guess, where people will call someone stupid because they didn't like a certain movie. But that's what I don't like to see. But anyway.
But there's a certain viewer that goes after her in a way that is below the line, that is offensive, that is just wrong.
Yeah.
That's who I'm addressing.
Sure. Okay.
So don't make this about you people. I'm addressing a certain segment. Don't think I'm automatically addressing you. Also, it's George Takei, not Takai. George Takei.
Okay. All right. Do you have a rant? Do you have a rant about someone that was actually on the show this week?
I've got an interesting hindsight is 2020 rant I want to go on in a little bit.
Oh, let's do it.
That'll give you some perspective. You want me to do it now?
I'd love to hear it.
Well, during my preparation, when I was looking up some of this Tiffany Ann Hathaway stuff, I stumbled upon Umberto's first phone call during Phase 3, Episode 85.
Okay.
Magic Hat Makuga was standing in the room when this phone call came in. He was there at that very moment.
No way.
Strangely enough, Ellis pretended to fire Magic Hat Makuga later in the episode. However, there was an interesting exchange as Umberto posited the rumor that Nate Parker could become the young Lando for the Han Solo spinoff, especially since Nate Parker was coming off a good performance in a Lucasfilms movie, Red Tails. Ellis was big on Nate Parker at the time as well. So it's crazy, 3.5 years later, we're on the verge of a casting announcement for young Lando.
Wow.
Nate Parker's embroiled in controversy on top of that, and Umberto will likely never call in again thanks to Magic Hat Makuga. So I was baffled by this phone call in Phase 3 and how much things have changed, and yet we're finally coming to a point where young Lando is coming. Hindsight is 2020.
When I went back and binged a lot of the Toad Hop episodes, it was so much fun listening to their shit. Like the same, there were so many times when they brought up the same opinions that I hear them speak on today. It's funny where you sort of see the genesis of their opinions from today, and it's funny how things parallel each other. Because I was watching it. Let's see, it was about the time that Civil War was coming out when I was binging all these. And when you start the podcast feed, it's them talking about the Avengers. And this was before The Dark Knight Rises was coming out. And I just got a huge kick out of listening to all that and the parallels and stuff. So I thought that was a lot of fun. I can't believe you found that out, though. That's great.
I love revisiting
really,
the
really
old shows just to look at things from that perspective. Who was right? Who was wrong? What are some weird moments that may have happened since then, like Umberto in this case? So revisit the history of the show, people. There's some great entertainment, some great interviews. There's so much gold in the back catalog, so check it out if you haven't already. I know that there are new Schmoville fans all the time, new members of Schmoville all the time, so make sure to appreciate the history of the show. We're going to do our best every week to kind of bring things into context overall, not just the current week.
Right. Are you ready to go over Celebrity Impression Game?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And last time they did this, Riley wasn't on the show, and he's a staple when it comes to the celebrity dating game, celebrity impression dating game. He often wins as well. You know, he's known for his Sean Connery. This week he did Yoda, and the outcome was no surprise. But what was your take on Riley being on the dating game?
He was cracking everybody up. My goodness. Every time he approached the mic and threw his ears up, people were going nuts over that. And I thought it was making me crack up. Really making me crack up. I'm surprised that you liked it so much. I thought, you know, with your whole Brian versus Riley thing, that you wouldn't have taken to that very much. But
well, I mean, since I had previously said how much I missed him on the last dating game, I'm separating Yoda, the impression, from Mark Riley, Mark Riley. So I just want to make that clear. But Christian as Billy Madison, very strong. Makuga as Cleveland, not as strong as Billy Madison, but I still got a great amount of entertainment from it.
But I loved it. I loved it.
I loved it too. Cobster, I couldn't tell if Cobster was doing Butthead or Finstock. I really couldn't.
I thought Cobster was doing the Joker again.
His Joker's not bad.
I think you talked about Riley being a staple. I don't think I want to see a celebrity impression game without Christian. I mean, I think hands down, are we in agreement that he's the best at celebrity impressions?
Oh yeah, I mean, he's far and away the best at impressions in general.
I don't want to see him ever sit out, or I don't ever want to see that game happen without him, because
Jamie Costa excluded, but
yeah, for sure. But always great, always fantastic. His Adam Sandler or Billy Madison was great. I don't recall if I've mentioned this on this podcast before. The thing that I dislike about the game, and you can call this a nitpick or not, but I think the game would work better if the contestant was I mean, I guess it makes less sense to do this when you think of what the game is actually called and what it's parodying.
It's a dating game. It's not a best impression game.
Exactly. And I know that they call it that, but for me, there's me doing Dennis again. I would like to actually keep the best impressions in the bag. So I would just want the contestant to control it a little bit more in that way.
Like, how do Butthead and Mickey last longer than Adam Sandler's Billy Madison and Michael Buffer, as well as Luke Cage? I mean, Ashley unloaded some of the best impressions right out of the gate.
I love you, RB3. I love you to death, but RB3 just lowers his voice to do Luke Cage. I mean,
there was a funny moment.
That's all I'm saying. But
it works every time, though. Sweet Christmas, it works every time. There was a funny moment. Ashley Mova, obviously, she has some blonde moments every now and then, even though she doesn't have blonde hair. However, there's a moment when Christian is running down the list of impressions after the first round. And Ashley replies, "Christian, I think my order is different than yours." And it didn't matter whether the order was different or not. He was just reminding her of all the impressions that she had to choose from. So I cracked up when she acted like they had to be in the same order as the list that she wrote down based on the order that they went.
That's a good catch. Good catch.
Also, the guys did not walk off this time when they were booted. Last time, Christian got upset because they revealed their identities when they walked off, and that helped the person in the game figure out who was who. So everybody was wisely coached before this game, unlike the last one.
Definitely. Nice improvement.
Also, did Christian sound nervous? Did Christian sound nervous as Billy Madison?
No, I don't think so.
That was her excuse for kicking him off, though.
Yeah, that's why I don't think Mova. It's dumb that I'm criticizing this because it's just a fun game, but Mova didn't seem like she was present. Like she didn't really know what she was talking about. Like she didn't know what she wanted to say. So it's like she just kind of made that up.
Well, for example, she wanted confidence.
I mean, I guess you
and
can
then
say
Ace's Indigo Montoya was too Rico Suave, too much confidence.
I guess you could say that
despite she wanted.
I don't know if she's saying that Billy Madison just sounds timid, but I don't think it was Christian sounding nervous for any reason. So
Not at all.
I don't know. I don't know. Whatever. But that just goes back to my point. I think it'd be better if the contestant has a little bit more control and is actually trying to keep the best impressions in the game. So,
Well, that's the thing. The contestant can make up whatever criteria they want.
exactly.
But since it is a dating game, they are kind of going off what the person said. If it was best celebrity impression game, then yes, it would be about picking the best one. But yeah, Ashley's rules went all the way. Again, I just said that first she wanted confidence, then Ace's Indigo Montoya was too confident, he was too Rico Suave, so I don't think she knew what she wanted either. But no surprise, Riley won. He always wins these games. Any competition for the most part, Riley has won at least once or multiple times. This time is Yoda.
Do you pretty much just win by not being dirty? Is that how you win this game?
Well, Mova said she didn't want someone to be dirty. That was one of her factors as to who she would keep.
I think everyone probably thinks that. Like no contestant is picking the dirty guy. Yeah.
In a dating game, the dirty guy does tend to get booted first.
Right. So that's how you win. Just don't be dirty.
And then when Christian did the after interview with Mova, he called over RB3 to make music as they were doing this impromptu rap. And then Makuga makes it into a race thing, and everybody's like, "Oh, damn you, Makuga, making it racist again." After the week that Makuga's had on similar subject matters. So
Christian's beat was so bad. My
RB3 had a good beat though.
My God. All right. What did you think about the last moment in the show where it was just a one-on-one at the table? Not that I have anything particular to say about Christian and Mova taking a second together to talk about that, but it was a nice way to break up the show, and I guess I've never really thought of it that way. But imagine if that was anywhere else in the show. You know what I mean? What if the Schmoes Know live show just started with Christian and Ellis for a minute, and it was just them talking to each other, and then they brought in a group dynamic?
I like that.
Yeah. See, that was the idea that I sort of took off with once I saw that, because it was just so striking to me to see only two people sitting at that table. And you don't have to start out the live show that way, but that'd be a nice, cool way to break it up and maybe have a moment with just Christian and Mark, or just Mark and Sasha, or whatever. Any combination of that would be really, really interesting. And that, yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I liked it here because it was kind of a sequel to Mova's appearance on the Harloff podcast. Yeah. And Christian said, "I want to have you back for a question game." And she said, "Well, as long as it's PG rated or G rated." And that boggles my mind, since Mova is so famous for having the dirtiest mind on the Collider crew. She's got to have PG questions, yet she's the dirtiest one on the staff. So I haven't yet figured out Mova entirely, so I love that they had this little one-on-one moment, even though it was rather brief.
I think she's just easily embarrassed, personally. I think that's what gets her. But other than that, she has no problem being dirty or letting her mind go to the gutter when certain jokes are made. That's my opinion. But
the blooper reel was meant for her on Best Of every week. And yes, Riley, I watch Best Of every week as well.
I do not. I'm sorry. I really don't. I've sort of my weekend time, my Saturday and Sunday editing this podcast and Screen Junkies movie fights and Shark Tank and Bill Maher. That's my break from Collider, is the weekend where I get to watch all those other shows.
But you are aware, though, that Mova is a huge star in the Best Of blooper reel, right?
Nope. But thank you for telling me. No idea.
All of Mova's dirty jokes, slip-ups, whatever, innuendos are really saved for that moment. So that kind of gives you an idea of why I'm so confused by her request for PG questions when I see blooper reel Mova every week. So check that out. There's some good stuff there. We got to talk about the last announcement that Christian made. He said there will be an announcement next week. He wants to share the moment with us. He thinks it'll be a lot of fun or something. We've got another announcement, Snelling. I've got anxiety already. What about you?
Christian texted me yesterday and said, you will like the announcement, as if this somehow catered to me. And I'm not saying the decision was made because of me. I'm just saying, like, to me, the way he worded it, it was like, hey, I have this announcement. Snelling will love this, of all people. That's how I took it. He won't tell me what it is, but what could it be? So is it a new announcement for the Schmodown? Because they were kind of teasing what this Schmodown Spectacular was going to be, the Geekdom belt or whatever that's coming out soon. Could it be an announcement about that? Could it be the addition of a new member? Could it be the announcement that he actually got the hookup for The Rock and Kevin Hart Schmodown, or any other famous person involved in the Schmodown? I mean, all those are possibilities. Maybe something involving TV recaps, if it caters to me. I don't know. What's going through your head? What could be the announcement?
They definitely would not make an announcement about TV recaps on Schmoes, no.
I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with TV, though. That's why I would like it, maybe.
Well, last week we talked about Jeremy Johns and how, Christian's going to try to build up the fact that he's inevitably going to join the Schmodown in a bigger capacity, as well as Schmoes Know. So maybe he's trying to get out in front of us because we tried to spoil it last week that Jeremy was bound to join at some point. So maybe he's making that official next week. Maybe he's clarifying Perry's status next week. I don't really know. I haven't given it much thought, to be honest. But the fact that he's not hyping it as much as he hyped who was leaving the show, this leads me to believe that he's going to blindside us with something, that it's going to be bigger than any of us are thinking. The fact that he's been so quiet about it when he's usually a lot more hype-ish, for lack of a better word, when he's typically teasing things a lot more for weeks on out. The fact that he's not doing that this time, that makes me think we're going to be set up for a huge announcement.
I agree with that completely, and that's sort of where I was going as well. To me, all of the speculation, everything that I mentioned, and even some like the mention of Jeremy Johns joining the Schmodown, all of that sounds underwhelming compared to what this sounds like.
Compared to TV recaps.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, it could involve TV if I'm going to get excited. I would love to see more TV content.
I don't know, man. He said it catered to me.
I'm just saying.
Underwhelming.
Maybe he's interviewing Damon Lindelof. That would get me hard, I think, or J.J. Abrams.
This is a kid show.
I mentioned to Ellis forever ago that no way, it wasn't forever. Well, it kind of was. When he was on Schmoville Podcast, he asked me what I would want to see them do, and I said interview with Damon Lindelof or J.J. Abrams.
I'm associated with a Leftovers podcast that did interview Damon Lindelof.
But did you interview Damon Lindelof?
One of my questions made the show.
Oh.
So he heard one of my questions.
I could listen to him talk for hours. Anyway.
My name was credited on the episode before and after his segment. Oh.
The only thing that I think is somewhat close that we've speculated on is the fact that Christian might have actually pinned down The Rock and Kevin Hart Schmodown after they get done filming Jumanji. That's the closest I think we've come to being right about this.
Will they be dressed as their Jumanji characters? That's what I want to know.
I think that's the only way to do it. Only way to do it.
We'll finally get the recipe for John Campia's orange drink. That's the announcement.
I would be very, very pissed if that was the announcement. What if the announcement has to do with Schmoville Podcast?
The cancellation of the Schmoville Podcast.
I was thinking more so like the invitation for us to come to the Collider studio and be a part of what's going on over there.
I've been invited before.
Is there any
I've
chance?
been invited before.
I'm talking about the show, not to just hang out and visit.
Let's see. Do they want our show in their studio criticizing what they do every week? Is there something in it for them for that to happen?
I think it would be more entertaining for Christian to see us talk about Makuga right in front of his face.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
they could like enter the ring and we could have an argument right then and there. Call him out. That'd be really interesting.
This Davies fella, who does he think he is?
He had just watched like season 2 or whatever of Entourage. He has Davies, the character that Ari Gold is frenemies with, in his head. He thinks you're that guy, and ergo Makuga thinks that he's Ari Gold. But anyway, that's another case for the Schmoes No Therapy show here.
You're urinating on them.
What? I love how high his voice gets. What? They can break our balls, but we can't break their balls? Go to the RB3 cam. Okay. I'm done. I'm done with this episode of the Sadsville podcast. No, let's transition it now. We're ending the Schmoville podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Is that it for us, Brian Davids?
That is it for us. Episode 29 in the books.
That's right. Great episode. Thank you for joining me, Brian. And thank you for everyone listening. Again, thanks so much for everyone who engages with us on the internet. For those new listeners, or for those people who want to know where we are, Brian, where can the people find you?
Again, you guys can follow me, Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast, Film Schlubs, wherever podcasts are found, or at filmschlubspodcast.com. I talk TV and film with various guest co-hosts, and I conduct interviews with people in the business like Better Call Saul showrunner Peter Gould. So that is that.
Guys, you can follow me on Twitter at WhatUpSnell. And listen, as you might know, Film Beef is no more.
The vegans won once again.
That's right. I'm no longer doing the Film Beef podcast, but I'm starting up another thing. Jay Williams, who was on this podcast before, you might have heard him there. We're starting this new project called Sight and Sound, but we're right in the middle of the startup, so we were hoping to get your help with this new podcast. Essentially, it's going to be a discussion show about music, movies, and television, but it's not going to be based around the need for you to have watched or listened to what we're discussing. So we would really appreciate your help, so we're going to do some giveaways. The first one, we need you to like our Facebook page. You can find it through my Twitter or my Facebook. Just search Sight and Sound. I think it's actually at Sight Sound Pod. Like that Facebook page for your chance to win Star Trek Beyond on Blu-ray or DVD if you want, or 4K Blu-ray, whatever. Your choice. Like the Facebook page for your chance to win Star Trek Beyond. The second giveaway we're doing, we need ratings and reviews on iTunes. Now, if you look up Sight and Sound on iTunes right now, there's just a teaser because our debut episode will premiere this Monday. So feel free to wait to hear the episode to see what your opinion is on the show. But we need ratings and reviews, so drop one in iTunes for your chance to win a Schmoes No t-shirt of your choice. There's going to be more information on the podcast coming out. The best way to keep up with that is to follow me on Twitter at WhatUpSnell. But those are some things that you can do to really help me out. And look, if you don't like the show, that's fine. But I think the Schmoville has some of the best fans in it, and I'd be very privileged to have some of you guys listen to my show and let us know what you think. So thank you very much. There's that.
That was a John Roca plug.
That was a John. Well, if I had said it a little bit faster, that was a John Roca plug. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll do it again in when I'm editing this. But anyway, there's all that. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. I'm Ryan Snelling.
And I'm Brian Davids.
And we will see you next time on the Schmoville Podcast.